All right. This is good, isn't it? Wow. You can feel the energy in the room. Absolutely. We better not let them down. It's going to be a fantastic first session. So, yes, as you were just hearing, my name's William Lewis, and I'm the publisher of the Wall Street Journal, which I just want to show you here. I know you will all have read it this morning, so, but it is America's most trusted news source, so you can literally improve your lives by reading this every day. We'll come back to that later. But it's my great honor to be, I suppose, the provocateur, the chairperson for this first session. And thank you, Sol. It's great to be here. And
thank you.
What an exciting few days we've got ahead. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dive into a report that's been...
No, come here. Yes, great, but come here. Oh, good.
Which that was my first question, actually. But this is this report which has come out, which I'm sure everyone has heard about and seen. We've been all over the airways with it this morning. We had a rather early press conference at 7 a.m. Thanks, Sol. It was great. But we're going to dive into this because it's an incredible piece of work and full of amazing facts and which we must digest and understand more of. So we'll come on to that shortly. So you've already heard the panel. There's a lot of experts in the room, but I want to start with Matthew. Welcome. This is very much your report, your team's report.
My team's report, yeah.
It's so got so much in it. There's so many stunning facts, including, obviously, you may not have realized, but I'm British.
Another immigrant?
I love both countries. That actually, I think the Latino effective GDP is actually larger, almost larger than the United Kingdom, which is a particularly interesting fact for me.
Yeah, a few more years. Hang on.
A few more years, that's right. So could you summarize it for us, if that's okay? And
sure.
Are there any particular startling facts that particularly amazed you as you were putting it together?
Sure. So let me start by just saying this thing is gobsmacking from start to finish.
Right.
And the reality is, whether you're an economist, you're a policymaker, or you are just a responsible citizen or resident of the United States, right? Like, this is important information that we all need to grasp hold of, and it needs to be the starting point for an important conversation. So what's the most shocking part of this? Well, first of all, the economic contribution of Latinos in the United States is incredibly impressive for its size and for its growth. So as we highlight in the report, the contribution of Latinos in 2017 to the U.S. economy was $2.3 trillion. If it were its own economy, that would make it the 8th largest in the world. Among the 10 largest GDPs in the world, again, the Latino GDP ranking third. Among those 10 largest, this would be the third fastest growing. And very importantly, if you look at that list of 10 countries, the 10 largest, of the developed countries, the 8 that are fully developed countries, this is the single fastest growing. And so the contribution of Latinos in the United States is growing 28% faster than US GDP at large. And so that's to say that this is not just an incredible gobsmacking story now, but what we have to look forward to is every single year going forward that this becomes a more and more important share of the U.S. economy and a more and more important share of the growth story and the growth picture for the U.S. economy.
And just before we get into the detail, is there any other country in the world which has such an interesting demographic group that was just going to be so impactful to an economy in such a material way? Or is the US unique in having such a thing?
This is certainly absolutely singular among the developed economies on the list.
All right, okay. I'm going to come back to it in a minute just to digest it, but Sol, want to bring you in early if I can. What do you make of the report? And I mean, perhaps just to, get some detail into it. I mean, a lot of the growth over the last 7 years, or the 7-year period that the report was based on, 2010 to 2017, was on personal consumption, which has been driven primarily by income growth. Yeah. Is that guaranteed to continue, or is it going to be a different pattern going forward? And also your general perspective on the report, please.
Well, first of all, the report is so critical for every American to read, to understand, to change the conversation that we have about Latinos in this country. That's kind of first and foremost, because it's facts and data. And as business people and as a business person, facts and data rule. They should rule. So that's number one. Number two, and relative to the consumption side, if you go talk to companies like Walmart or Pepsi or many of the people that are associated here that will be on stage at some point, this cohort, the Latino cohort, is driving most of their year-on-year net sales growth. There's hardly an industry that isn't affected on net sales growth year-on-year disproportionately. So is that going to continue? The answer is the data shows absolutely yes, for at least the next 3 decades or more. That's simply because of the average youth, the age that the native-born Latino cohort is at 18, 19 years old. So we look like Indonesia, India, whatever, in terms of that kind of longevity, kind of the runway that's ahead of us. So it's really important to understand that, because Social Security runs out of funding shortly. If we didn't have this cohort, the question you asked Matthew, the question is how much sooner would it? And the question is now, fundamentally, we need more labor force growth rate. And ultimately, the ultimate question is so how do we get there?
Can I just add a number there? You were talking about income and consumption. For the last 2 years that we have data, Latino incomes, this is wage and salary income, grew 14.4% in the United States.
Yeah.
And the non-Latino population, that income grew just 7.3. So that's to say Latinos enjoyed double the income growth over the last 2 years, and that translates into consumption. The consumption numbers are even more shocking. Latino real consumption from 2010 to 2017 grew 70% faster than consumption by non-Latinos.
Wow, those are stunning numbers. And actually, just as I want to come to David, one of the few groups that can look forward to children being better off than their parents, which is incredibly culturally impactful, which is very interesting. David, you talked about the idea of this secret source of post-millennials in the population growth. Can you explain that? Because I thought that was very interesting.
Certainly,
from the report.
certainly. Latino post-millennials, born from 1997 onwards, are the secret sauce for America to retain its economic predominance in the world. Of the top 10 economies, the developed economies, Japan, for example, Japan's population is imploding. It's going to go from 130 million to about 80 million by 2050. UK, Germany, France, Italy all have net population shrinkage. Their populations are getting smaller. So all developed countries have this issue, who's going to do the work? The US has the answer, Latinos. Latinos are much younger. Now, you've often heard that the median age of Latinos is about 29 years, but actually if you separate them out into the immigrants and the US-born, immigrants have a median age of 46 years. US-born, 19. Nearly 1 million Latinos a year are born in the United States. In the year 2003, nearly 1 million Latinos were born. They're US citizens. They grow up speaking English. This year, they entered the labor force. Next year, another million turn 16. And the year after that, another million. And it'll go on till at least the year 2030, and possibly longer. That's where the growth is. They're young. Compared to their immigrant parents, 90% of US-born Latino post-millennials graduate from high school. Only half their parents did. 70% go on to college. They're going on to graduate school. They're getting masters. They're getting PhDs, MDs. They're becoming professionals. Their income is going to be so much higher than their parents that in comparison, as you look at the non-Latino portion of the US, their children have not done as well as the parents. Actually, it's kind of downward social mobility as you look to the children. For Latinos, that million a year, by comparison, they're going to be doing so much better than their parents. They're going to be where the source of optimism is. So you're getting them right at the inflection point. They're just starting. They're going to be earning more. They're going to be buying more. They're much more educated. They're very good in English and not so bad in Spanish. Much better than we Chicanos ever would be. You know how Chicanos are. We can do about a sentence, you know. Hola, ¿cómo estás? And then we kind of run out. So we have to start talking about, how the Dodgers do last night.
So David's making fun of me. No.
So this is the secret sauce. None of the European countries, plus Japan, none of them have this population growth. Actually, China does not have very good population growth either because of that one-child policy. Only India has population growth. But the per capita GDP for India, they're still starting that process, is much lower. It's a couple of $1,000s, whereas for Latinos, over 30,000. This is the sweet spot. This is the group that will carry the United States into the 21st century in a position of economic preeminence.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Ralph, I want to bring you back. Everyone, David, needs to know, what's the knee injury, David? What do we do? What have you done to your knee? Everyone will want me to ask.
Okay.
And are you okay?
I'm sorry about the crutches. This is temporary. I went to the gym.
Oh.
I got on the stationary bike.
What?
And I blew out my knee.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
Oh, dear.
self-limiting, I'll be better in about another month.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to come back to you later on and talk about, because in the report it shows actually this population area is much healthier as well, actually.
Yes, we'll get to that.
Which I'd like to get into.
Except for me.
But we're glad it's nothing more serious than that, so thanks for hobbling up. Ralph, can I ask you about the workforce participation? Because another stunning fact in the report is how much Latino group participates in the workforce, and also can you address the work ethic issue, because obviously that's something that the Latino community is known for. Is it a given that continues as we move into new elements of the population? Can you address those issues, please?
I think the interesting thing about the workforce participation is the workforce participation is over 65% for Hispanics, and that is 5% greater than the non-Latino population. So if you want to think about it, Latino 65%, and then the rest of the non-Latino population at 60%, which says that the Latinos that are here to work. We're not here to feed off of welfare. We're here to work. And that's part of the Latino work ethic that has drilled into me by my mom, my grandmother, my abuela, and every other part of the family. So we're here to work. But this comment that was just made about the secret sauce, I want to commend you, because when I read the report, that secret sauce of this cohort, within the cohort of Hispanics that are the young Hispanics that are just graduating, is simply, folks, the greatest generation of Latinos in the U.S. ever. This is our greatest generation. They're more educated. They're more entrepreneurial. They have the capability to drive this country to places it has never been. We didn't talk about entrepreneurship, but by the way, Hispanics and Latinos over-index and are the leading entrepreneurs in terms of the various segments, in terms of demographics. But what is really encouraging is what is driving Latino entrepreneurship are actually Latinas. Latinas have made up over 50%. That's right. Over 50%. Yeah. You make up over 50% of the businesses that have been created in the last several years in the U.S., and you're just getting started. So when I think about companies that don't understand what was just said about this cohort of young people, one other thing really amazed me about this cohort. If you look at the high school graduation rates for Latinos, we'll go back to 1996, it was 34% were dropping out of school. If you have a cohort where 34% drop out of school, that's not a very bright future. Fast forward to 2016, that was down to 10%. And like was said, is when you look at the high school graduates that graduated in June of 2016, 72% were enrolled in college by October, and that is the highest cohort of any cohort in this country, including the non-Latino population. It has never been that high.
Just to add to that with one more number, for the last 2 years for which we have data, the rate at which Latinos graduate with a bachelor's degree, so educational attainment growth increased 8% among the Latino population and only 3.2% among non-Latinos. Now, the reason this is important is because, in this case, education is human capital accumulation. And so that's to say there's rapid human capital accumulation among Latinos.
What does that mean, human capital accumulation?
It means that they are becoming more productive. Their productivity is increasing. So whatever they're producing today, we know they will produce more tomorrow.
Does that mean that we're going to get upskilled as well?
Yeah, so that means
right.
that this trend is accelerating growth.
Right.
And could I just add in, you asked, is this going to continue into the future?
Yes, yeah.
Well, I don't know about the future, but I can tell you from the past, here in California, I wrote a book about this a couple of years ago. From 1940 to 2015, for 75 years, Latino males had the highest rate of labor force participation of any group. 75 years, 3 generations of workers. You could say working hard is kind of a Latino thing, no?
There you go, baby. That's right.
Well, while we were talking, I couldn't hear the rustle of the Wall Street Journal song.
Yeah.
Why have you opened up the Wall Street Journal to that page?
Well, I'm so pleased, always to listen to Ralph and David, he's the guy I bow to whenever I want to know anything about Latinos in the U.S. because he's done so much longitudinal history, as well as now Matthew, who is coming in almost fresh, and I say almost fresh in the sense of the perspective on this issue. But because Will is here, I have to say this. Each year now for the last 2 years, before Latitude, we've had an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. And the reason why Will is here, and I have to say this, and I'm not trying to do a commercial endorsement, but I am. The Wall Street Journal, for me, has always been a publication that I could always talk to. And they were always aware and sensitive, whether it be on the news side or on the editorial side or whatever. And now with Will's leadership, there's like a turbocharging in terms of what's going on, not only the Wall Street Journal, because he runs the Dow Jones Group, but Barron's and MarketWatch. And the conversation is so different when people take a business approach and they look at the data, because he has to worry about readership, he has to worry about audience, he has to worry about revenue per reader, per audience metric, whatever it might be. And so one of the questions I have for you is what was your kind of, because as you pointed out, you are not American, you got this funny accent, right? And when you came over and you were asked to run this business, Dow Jones Group,
Yeah.
what made you want to focus in particular and understand better and partner like you are here today?
Yeah, well, I think it was a couple of things. Firstly, my job is to hunt growth. So, and you can only, I remember actually when I first saw the data, and you can only just gasp and go, this can't be right, actually. The way that you are all growing, and it's just extraordinary. It's off the scale compared to any other grouping in the US. So you can't be in business in the US and not look to focus on trying to, frankly, in my instance, I want more of you to read the Wall Street Journal and to read Barron's and to read MarketWatch and to use our products and services. You're at 18% of the population now. I think by 2050 you're going to be 2050 you're going to be at 30%. So that's the first. But the second thing, there is something, as I got to know, in large part thanks to you, what you stand for as a group, your work ethic, the values that you have, that in many ways define American values, actually. And it's just as I've got to know more, and as an outsider, I can't help but think that you are the greatest Americans, and this is a fantastic thing. So that's why I'm here.
Sorry to interrupt your flow.
No, well, I thought I was meant to be asking the question, Sol.
No. But for everybody's benefit, again, this is not a commercial. I like to ask people about people that like to grow, people that like to make money. I'm a capitalist, and I always like to ask the question, so why are you here? Why are you involved? Why are you looking? And it's the right answer that you gave, which, not put aside the personal stuff, but But growth matters. And all of us should have that in our DNA, and that's been part of, the greatness of this country.
Yeah.
Where that's part of our DNA. We think about growth, we think about where do we get it. We almost cast a blind eye to where we get it, other than till recently. And now we have to undo that recent kind of part of conversation and just focus on this. So what you've done here, and this is why I pull it out, and sorry, telling the story is so important. Putting a spotlight on this conversation and the data in particular can help change and make a difference on our national conversation.
And quite frankly, Sol, I've not seen any other publication do it, and that's why I subscribe to only 2 publications, the Wall Street Journal and Barron's.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Because they tell the facts. I just want people to, these days, I don't want to hear your opinions. I appreciate the opinions.
Well, thank you.
Give me the facts.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I haven't paid for this slot, by the way. But to build on that then, can the panel address on a go-forward basis, what are the sectors most likely to benefit from this ongoing growth going forward? So we've seen amazing numbers about new company formation. Is it the housing market we should look to particularly? What are the particular sectors that people should be salivating over where there's going to be growth coming out of the Latin?
He's got a chart that I loved in his report, which talks about the growth of households. And if you're in the real estate business, you would like that chart because it says that Hispanics have led the country in household formation. And therefore, I think in homes for the last several years, it's an amazing figure.
I'll give you a home ownership number. So for the last 2 years for which we have data, home ownership rates among Latinos grew 7%, 7.0%, and only 1.7% among non-Latinos.
Okay.
So that's just one example.
Are there other sectors that we should be looking at? Would anyone like to offer us a guide?
We'll have tomorrow morning an individual that's the chair of the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, Victor Aregas. He'll be here tomorrow. And he's going to share some data, but the punchline of the data is entrepreneurship is now showing up in every sector. So before, people always thought it was about window cleaners, building cleaners, service kind of only industries, which are important, right? They're part of that 7 million gap that we have right now in our country of unfilled jobs, but they're showing up now everywhere. And the second point is that these Latino businesses that are being formed, 60% of their market is non-Latino, okay? So it's not just in the barrio or in the neighborhood, it's for everybody. And then about almost half of their employees are non-Latinos. So they're employing Latinos, but they're also employing others. So it's one of the most prolific groups of job creation, again, which is a story that doesn't get told when we talk about, the monthly jobs numbers and reports and all that, because we have a big issue in the enterprise sector of our economy, which is we've gone from 7,700 publicly listed companies to 3,600 today. Consolidation. I run big companies, Ralph's run big companies. When you acquire and you consolidate, guess what you do? You cut jobs. You're downsizing because you find efficiencies. Now we need this entrepreneurial class to be the ones creating the jobs, and we need more of it. And just to give you a quick math calculation, let's assume there's 60 million Latinos in the country. And let's assume they have 4 people per household. You divide 4 into 60, you get 15. And there's about almost 5 million Latino-owned businesses. So you think about 5 million and 15 million, that's 1/3. You could argue between 1 out of every 4, 1 out of every 3 families owns a business. So when you want to define an entrepreneurial class of people, which is really what our DNA has always been about in America, this is the cohort.
And so just one point to add to that. When you look at the future of job growth, one of the things that everybody's concerned about is the impact of artificial intelligence and getting rid of both blue and white collar jobs. What most experts say today, the way to answer that is with entrepreneurship. You've got to be able to think of new business models and new things to keep your jobs from being done by a robot in the future. So the fact that we over-index on entrepreneurs is a great thing.
David, I sort of come back to you on this very interesting stat in there, which may help us with, that's okay, about the healthiness of the Latino community vis-a-vis
yes.
widespread. Would you mind setting it up with what the stat is? Sorry, I should have forewarned you. Would you address the issue of why that is and how important that is?
So I'll just give you two really important data points. So first of all, among the 4 leading causes of death in the United States, Latinos have substantially lower, pardon me, they have substantially lower death rates for all 4 classes, the top 4. More importantly, they have a substantially,
We live longer.
well, and that's the other one, actually substantially
Exactly.
higher longevity, right?
Exactly.
Longer life expectancy as well.
Exactly.
I mean, you look at the top causes of death: heart disease, cancer, accidents, and chronic lower respiratory disease. I know it's a mouthful. Latinos have about a 30% lower, we have 30% fewer heart attacks every year than non-Latinos. We have 30% fewer cancers. We have 60% less chronic lower respiratory disease. In fact, you go down every cause of death with but one exception, Latinos have about a 30% lower death rate. Now, the one exception is diabetes. And diabetes is far rarer. It's the number 7 cause of death. But what's the one thing you hear about Latinos in health all the time? Diabetes. Why don't you ever hear, oh, and by the way, have 30% fewer heart attacks? And have 30% fewer, why don't we ever hear that? We have fantastically good infant mortality, equivalent to non-Hispanic whites, even though Latina moms have less access to care. We use services less, and we live 3.5 years longer. Now, I turn 74 next month. Let me tell you right now, those extra 3.5 years look mighty good. Now, this is called a paradox, because according to all the epidemiologists, Latinos should have the worst health. Don't even get me going on the Latino physician shortage. We have horrible access. 30% of Latinos still don't have health insurance, and yet we have fantastic outcomes. Now, over half the babies born in California are Latino, and I keep telling my colleagues, what do you mean they're a paradox? They're the norm. We have done so little research, we don't know how Latinos achieve such fantastic health outcomes. But I have a secret idea. Factor abuela. Las abuelas. I tell them, whatever your abuela said, she was probably right. Do what she said.
Exactly.
So we've got 5 minutes left, so I want everyone to... these are incredible numbers. The data tells it all, that and it's even more powerful when extraordinary people like you, the panel here, talk about it. What's to be done? Because I detect that you get it, I get it, we all get it, but I detect there may be a feeling that other people in America aren't aware of this. So what is the plan? How are you going to address this issue? And what milestones should we look for in the next 5 to 10 years that will show us that America does understand the power, not the coming power, but the already existing power of this group and the increased power in the years ahead? What's to be done, Sol?
So let me start first with the Latino Donor Collaborative, who we're now starting to call Latino Data Collaborative, because we're about facts and data. We're taking a business-like approach and brand. So if you were to do a survey in the US, and we have done those, you would find that there's a large cohort, 40 to 50%, that believe that everybody came here illegally, doesn't speak English, all that kind of stuff, right? Which is what I call the Trump cohort, okay? And I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying the people that have a certain belief. And so the question is how do we deal with that? Well, you deal with it like a business. I've had in my life, I've had to go do transformations of 4 different companies. So what happens when a company's in trouble and they bring in somebody like me? You got to fix something, right? Usually you start with a brand, and then you look at all the root cause reasons why. So we've been doing the research. So my view, first of all, is we have to change the perception with facts and data, not name calling, not all the other stuff that tends to happen in our discourse today. And we need relationships with entities like the Dow Jones Group, like Fox, like NBC, like all those that are in the media, Axios and others, that are part of the system of communicating facts and data and stories, et cetera. So we've been gathering the data. We've spent a few years building this up so that now we could have a platform like Latitude to talk about it with people like yourself and others that can help, convey the story, the facts and data. That's part A. Part B then is, okay, so what do we do with it? We action it through relationships and leverage entertainment media. And by the way, we're going to spend most of today talking about the entertainment media, because we did research also to find that this is about 5 years old. 10 billion impressions are made a day by entertainment media of who we are or are not. So for example, Latinos as being gangbangers, drug dealers, people on welfare, whatever, has been what the entertainment media has done for the last decade and a half to 2 decades in terms of portrayals, by actual counts. Okay, so this is not just, Sol thinking. We went out and got data.
Yeah.
So we have to get everybody involved. So we're going to have conversations today about the entertainment sector, the news sector, with facts and data to say, it's not that you're stupid, it's not you're anything else, it's just here's some data that might help you think about where your audience really is going to be. So maybe you don't want to offend your audience, you want to support them, you want to give aspirational kinds of thinking to help the economy, et cetera. That's part B. Now, part C then gets into the political realm. Because at the end of the day, we all have to understand, whether you're of the Republican tribe or the Democrat tribe or an independent tribe, it doesn't matter. We all need to understand that we have one core issue in our economy today. It's the most important one. It's not tax rates, it's not interest rates, it's labor force growth rates. And we have data to show the correlation. And so if we don't have labor force growth rates, this economy, as we are fading right now, last year we ended at 2.9, we're going to probably end this year at 2.1, whatever the estimates are. And next year we're supposed to be at 1.8 or lower. And it's going to get worse if we don't start supplementing our labor force. So that means we have to solve immigration. And it's not about walls. It's about process. So if I want a visa to come here and work, we should be able to handle it in the digital era. Ralph and I have run businesses where we can take a customer's order and process it in seconds. Right? So why can't you search databases to find criminal elements or whatever it might be in my record base, wherever I'm coming from, and deal with that? We have processes, we have systems. So to me, the solution is about process and systems. We're a sovereign nation. We need to know who comes in and out. But in a digital era, that's not an issue. And then finally, we have to start looking at, right now, Matthew's done the calculation in the report, that we might need maybe in the next couple of years 700,000 new labor force entrants to offset baby boomer loss and to keep our economy growing at 2%. And so that's just math. Everybody should own that. Every American should own it and say that's what we want, so that we're creating jobs, we've got enough consumption that's supporting the economy, et cetera. And so we have to have a solution that fixes process, not barriers, not walls, all that kind of stuff. It keeps the sovereign nation notion. It keeps this notion of border security, et cetera, because it doesn't eliminate that. That has to happen, and it's happening. But we need to think about solving the real issue, which is process, and knowing how many we need. And given the numbers that we're talking about, you can talk about caravans, you can talk about all this stuff. There ain't enough that's trying to come in right now to supplement our economy.
Okay.
Will, from a corporate point of view, what I think we need to do, the reports that we've talked about give us wonderful data that point to this cohort, especially of young people that we have never seen before, more educated, with higher incomes, with great entrepreneurial skills. But the question from a corporate point of view, how do you get people from those cohorts to do business with you? And my answer is very simple, is you have to hire people from the segments you're trying to acquire in order for you to be successful.
That's right.
Yep. And I'll give you one quick example. When I was the CEO of Singular Wireless, my competitors spent a huge amount of money sponsoring the NFL. The other one went for Major League Baseball. I called our team and said, how can we counter? And our response was beautiful. Our Hispanic lead said, we're going to be the first ones to sponsor the Mexican national soccer team, which we did. And our sales went up 25% for a very little price. I mean, we had people in stores, by those people signing jerseys that were 200 people in the store. You couldn't fit them in the stores in California, but it really highlights the importance of having people in your business that understand the segments that are going to let you grow your business, and especially be able to lead it.
Well, that's I think, just to sum it up, and this has been a fantastic panel. Thank you very much. What this report, and I really, if you haven't read it, do get a chance to read it. It shows what you all know, but it lays it bare that you all have this incredible work ethic. You have this self-reliance. You have family values at the heart of your communities. You're entrepreneurs in a way that is off the scale compared to other groups. You're healthy, but we need to do something about the diabetes, but you're healthy. And most of all, you are great Americans, but on top of that, you are great for America. And this is a wonderful thing to see in this report. So we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
All right. Wow.